Hello everyone, Zelleranth here, and for this video we're going to be taking a look at Tololo, a unit that will be on the standard banner on the release of Girls Frontline 2. She is a Sentinel class with an assault rifle, so she is the same class and weapon category as Ju. But as we'll see here as we get into her kit, she is vastly different in how she works to her. And so let's first go ahead and take a look at her passive. Right, so as we move down, we'll go ahead and take a look at the trait. So it's Aurora Curtain. So this is a self AoE target, so her self passive skill. So it says fills confectance index to a maximum at the start of battle. So she has her confectance index immediately available, so she can basically cast her ultimate right off the bat. So after attacking, if the confectance index is at max, which it will be at the beginning, it'll consume all of it and gains 1 instance of extra action. So whenever it's maxed out, she can get an extra turn when it uses it, so she can attack and then go again. And then at the start of each action, for every 2 points a confectance index gains 1 random buff until the end of action. And each time an allied unit deals hydro damage, this unit gains 1 stack of Light Spike. And Light Spike is a buff here that gives critical rate, and critical damage is increased by 3%, stacking up to 8 times. So you can get 24% on that. And then this buff cannot be cleansed. So throughout a battle, the longer a battle goes, if hydro damage is being done, she's going to be stacking up this critical hit and damage quite quickly. Now, when looking at this, we can kind of see where this has already got synergies with characters I've already discussed here. As we've seen with Sabrina, she synergizes quite well with Sabrina because Sabrina also does a lot of hydro type things within her kit. And so every time Sabrina does anything that puts out hydro damage out there, so it's going to get critical rate and damage. So that's a way that you can stack it. And that was one of the reasons it was mentioned as a big pro for having a Tololo with Sabrina. But that is her passive here. And so if we take a look at her fortification segment for a 4th dupe, during an extra action, so if she gets her extra action, this unit gains targeted attack boost, crit rate boost, phase boost, and piercing 2 boost for 2 turns. So just a bunch of buffs that it's giving after you have your 4th dupe. And when we start looking at other skills here, you'll see that all these like increased damage and elemental damage type buffs, not only do they buff that, but a lot of the rest of her kit has extra things that happen if she has a certain amount of buffs with on her. And then we look at if we get a 5th dupe with her passive, the effects of light spikes are enhanced, increasing the critical rate and critical damage by 2%. So you can see that basically makes it 5%. You can do it 8 times. So now you can bring your crit rate up to 40% just from that. And then we move up to her basic skill here, just like the others. This one's a range of 8. AoE, it's just a single target attack, stability damage of 2, no cooldown on it. So this one, select one enemy target with 8 tiles and deal 80% of attack to them. So nothing special there, just a basic attack. So we go to the other active skill over here, Black Hole Inversion. This one has a range of 8 with a cooldown of 2. A single target attack does a stability damage of 3. This one, you'll select one enemy target with 8 tiles and deal hydro damage equal to 130% of attack to it. If phase weakness is exploited, gain 2 points of confectance index. And so what it means by phase weakness is when she's doing hydro damage, that's basically the phase or the element that she is utilizing. And if she's exploiting a enemy's weakness, it is going to gain 2 points of her confectance. So if you're fighting someone that's weak to hydro, that's where you're getting that bonus in place. And then if you see here on her first dupe down here for this skill, Fortification Segment 1, if a phase weakness is exploited, it ignores 15% of cover damage reduction for this attack. And so with that dupe, it just means you're ignoring some. If they're undercover, you're going to get to ignore some of it if they are weak to hydro. And so the next one down here, Supernova Impact, range of 8 with a cooldown of 2. It's a single target attack with a stability damage of 3. This one is you'll select one enemy target within 8 tiles to deal physical damage equal to 130% attack to it. If you're under the effect of 2 or more buffs, and as you remember, within the passive skill, she can get herself buffs from that, so it should be pretty easy to meet this condition. So she's under the effect of 2 or more buffs, increased damage dealt by 20%, and gain 2 points in confectance index. So this one is just a big damage hit on a single target. If she has more buffs, you're really going to only want to use this if you have that 2 or more buffs so that you can get that 20% bonus to the damage. And then if you look at her dupe for Fortification Segment 2, if under the effect of 3 or more buffs, so now you need 3 for this one, the attack deals hydro damage, so to change it from physical to hydro. And additionally, I'll gain 1 extra point of confectance index. So that's a nice little buff there for that skill. And then lastly, we'll go to the ultimate skill here, Morte Lumina. So this one has a range of 8. This one costs 4 to cast of the Confectants, and then it's a single target attack and does ability damage of 4. So this one is select one enemy target within 8 tiles and deal hydro damage equal to 180% of attack to it. If under the effect of 3 or more buffs, so she has 3 or more buffs, increase the damage dealt by 15% and reduce the skill's cooldown by 2 turns. So pretty important to have those buffs. I mean, that's kind of the big thing, is getting her all the buffs on her that so she can meet these conditions. And then when you kind of look at the buffs to this, Fortification Segment 3, if under the effect of 3 or more buffs, increase the damage dealt by 30% and reduce the skill's cooldown by 3 instead of 2 turns. And then if she has her 6th doof, if this kills a target, gain 1 point of Confectants Index. So right then and there, if you kill someone with this, you're going to be that much closer to using your ultimate again. All right, and that pretty much covers her kit. It might seem a little simplistic, but a lot of it, you can see how it all kind of ties together with those buffs and then getting a bunch of those Confectants index points. Because if you notice with the passive, the big thing is that when you get it at max, you'll gain an extra turn, and then at the start of each action, for every 2 points she has, she gains a random buff. And so you can get your buffs that way for using these skills, and you want to have those buffs for using these skills, because if you have 2 or more buffs here, you're getting those 2 Confectants index points. And then if you exploit their weakness up here, you get another 2 on this skill. So that's a quick and easy way to get the points here, which then gives you the buffs that then triggers this. And so you can kind of see how you go back and forth. There's kind of rotation. You're going to want to use your actives. Then eventually when you can use your ultimate, get that reduced by 2, get 3 buffs, and they're just going to stack and stack. And then as you're using Hydra damage, you're building up her light spike here, giving her crit rate and crit damage, which is why she's really good with Sabrina, who also does Hydra damage. And then if you start getting dupes for her, you're just kind of buffing those abilities. Nothing in the dupes seems mandatory. She looks to be a full kit. Without them, they're just more making it have more capabilities and more power to it rather than anything extraordinary. Now, when we take a look at the neural helixes, just remember these are enhancements you can get on her as you level her up. So we have Comet Trail Transit. This gives an extra action, increases mobility by 1 tile. So when she gets her extra turn, she can move an extra tile when she has it. Principles of Observational Astronomy. When using Black Hole Inversion, applies congestion to the target for 2 turns, puts the debuff congestion on them. Invisible Light. When an extra action is triggered, gains attack up 2 and damage up 2 for 1 turn. That one's going to be big because you should be getting that extra action decently enough amount of turns. And so that's just a nice buff to make her do a lot more damage on that extra turn. The next one we have is Retrograde Motion. When using Supernova Impact, if an allied unit performs a support attack before the skill activation, apply a stun to the target for 1 turn. So this one seems like it'd be fairly useful, and that's why I'm kind of seeing that she may be part of a team where you have her, you have Kwaiju, and then you have Sabrina, Kwaiju and Sabrina, because if a unit performs a support attack, which Kwaiju does, then this will apply stun to them, so she can do her support attack and apply stun. The only thing is, based on this wording, it's before skill action, and Kwaiju does it after she does damage. So this one I would kind of need to, I don't know if that 100% was synergized with her, so I'll actually have to test that in game. But if this did synergize with her, that would be really big to because then you could use her with Sabrina and Kwaiju, and they'd be a great teammates together in that case. If not, you probably have support attacks from other agents that can activate before, and those would be the ones that will be utilized in her team, so she can get that stun on the units. Then we have Galactic Cruise. When exploiting a phase weakness, cleanse 2 buffs from the target before attacking. And then Stellar Eclipse. When at max HP and stability index, ignore 10% of the target's cover damage reduction. And then Shared Afterglow, when Confectants Index is below max, increases damage dealt by 7%. So a little bit of a buff to damage if you haven't maxed it out like your passive wants. And that pretty much covers it for Tololo. So she is a good character. Now, she, to me, is not as good as Kwaiju and Sabrina. And the biggest reason I'd say that is she is very specialized. she really wants to be fighting people that are weak to hydro damage. And so that's going to be good when you have a fight against hydro enemies. She's going to be the one. She's going to be a good go-to for those. But if they're not having that phase weakness, it kind of weakens a lot of her kit because a lot of them want her exploiting that weakness. And so seeing as it's more situational, at the beginning of the game, you're going to want more well-rounded units versus more specialized. So I think while she's good, I think she's one that I'd want to pick up later. And that's simply just because she's more specialized. I need to get the generalist units that can be really good in all scenarios, especially for endgame. And then once I start getting those units, I have those teams built, then I want to start getting specialized units like her, so then I can min-max areas based on the weakness of the enemies. Now we can kind of see here, if we look at the pros and cons they have here on Pridewind, she is a low-cost operator that has 2 cooldown skills and 1 ultimate skill of 4 Confectance Index cost. All of her skills can be used at the start of battle, and that's just because she immediately starts with all of her Confectance Index at max. Her base skills has a good damage and gets better when she has buffs, which she can give to herself. Her passive has an innate critical rate and critical damage permanent boost. Like I said, that permanent boost can be increased if you have someone doing the hydro damage, which is something Sabrina can bring to the team or any other hydro units. Her neural helix keys help enhance and make her better throughout the early, mid, and late stages. She isn't a dupe-reliant character, with having just 1 dupe being enough to make her strong. And that first dupe over here is that if phase weakness is exploited, ignores 15% of the cover damage reduction. And that's why I'm saying she's going to be specialized in wanting to exploit the weaknesses. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, because she's going to be better than other units when she's going up against enemies weak to her. But she's going to be weaker when they're not weak to her abilities. And so you have the cons here. Needs an allied hydro unit to continue to stack her permanent critical rate, critical damage boost. Hydro T-Dells are heavily limited with only Sabrina and Colfine available. So it actually mentions the 2 main units you're going to want. So we've already gone over Sabrina. Colfine, I'm not sure on her. Is she one of the standard units we'll be getting right off the bat? Colfine, okay, so she's an SR, not an SSR. So she should be really easy to get. So that would be good that if you get Sabrina, and then this one you should just have, just because you'll eventually get SRs as you pull. And so that one will be an easy one to pair with her right off the bat. And then deals Hydro Element, which gets replaced by Electric and Freeze, phase weakness later in stages. So this one's seeming like Hydro may not be as important of an element down the line, and Electric and Freeze are more important. Now that can just depend. I mean, when these types of games, they're always changing up what the end game bosses or enemies are weak to, and it's always going to be reliant on the newest characters generally in these gachas. So it looks like they may not have released a Hydro character recently based on this first weakness, and if they haven't released one recently, they very well might have a Hydro coming here soon. And if they do that, then we'll probably have enemies that are weak to Hydro, which is just going to make her even better at that point. So you can say it's a weakness right now, but eventually it'll be a positive when you start having Hydro weak endgame enemies. What it currently is doesn't mean what it's going to be in the future. But that pretty much covers her. And so when it comes to me thinking about her, like, she's not going to be one that I'm directly targeting right off the bat. It's just because she's not a generalist, and that's what I want in the beginning. Quanjo and Sabrina can do more general things for your team, so they're going to be the more valuable ones to target, especially when I get those selectors. And so I will eventually get her on a selector, depending on what the other standards are that I haven't covered yet. But she will eventually be pulled at some point. It just depends on my needs at the time when I get those selectors. And right now I have Sabrina and Quanjo being a higher priority than her, so I might be getting here a little bit later down the line, unless I lose a 50-50 and then get her. I mean, there's always the chance I lose the 50-50 and I get her and then I have her, and that's always good. I just won't have to use a selector to get her at that point. But that pretty much covers all of Tololo. If you like my content, if you could like, comment, and subscribe, it really helps. And thanks for watching.